You're listening to Money FM 89.3. It's a weekend here. We're taking it easy somewhat. 10:30 in the morning now, and we were talking about marketing campaigns and brand marketing and what companies should be doing. I am with Miguel Bernas from Timberwolf Media and CMO at large at Black Marketing. And Miguel, you were talking about this watch guy doing a really good job with zero production budget and a captive audience of how many millions of viewers?
Yeah, he has a subscriber base on his YouTube channel of 100,000. I don't know how many people subscribe to his email newsletter, but the YouTube channel has 22 million views.
That's good use of resources, really.
Isn't
And
it?
It's expertise, I guess. It's the way he talks about what he knows.
And you should see this dude's video. He shoots. You can tell he's in his office
Uh-huh.
because it's a very plain background. He has two camera setups. He has one where he's sitting on his couch or whatever, and then the other is when he does close-up shots of the watches that he handles. And that's it. There's no location. He probably does everything on his
And
own.
coming from a TV background, I know how hard it is to produce just a few seconds of video. It takes hours to do. But apart from this guy, who else do you think, SMEs or big companies, who are doing a good job at, well, marketing the brand?
So let me give you another. This is a tech company example that I like. So there is a Tel Aviv-based customer data platform company called Optimove.
Okay.
So one of the cool things they do about their marketing is that they basically run an online magazine designed for digital marketers. So it's like a MarTech kind of, and it's a combination of like an online magazine and an email newsletter, which they call Post Funnel. So and again, it's a very, very niche audience because you're talking about digital marketing people, how they use technology, modern innovation and digital marketing techniques, etc. So again, very, very select audience. They've attracted a subscriber base, I believe, of somewhere between 40 and 45,000.
Okay.
Right? And again, these are people who are reading your stuff on a weekly basis. You can reach them for free because it's all based on email. And again, you've got this ongoing relationship. Now, I'll sort of switch sides again and go back to an SME example. There's another YouTuber that I like for a company called Fort Belvedere. You'll appreciate this, Tim. They do ties and they do pocket squares and stuff like that.
I used to appreciate that. Men's furnishings.
Yes. So that's his business, right? He runs an online store, but he does a YouTube channel called The Gentleman's Gazette.
Okay.
Where he talks about how to dress up in suits and this is the proper way. I'm imitating his accent. This is the proper way of drinking champagne, and it's for this kind of very dapper gentleman kind of target audience. But again, this is his marketing, right? His marketing consists of his YouTube channel and a newsletter, and that's how these guys drive their business. And I think just again to come back to kind of marketing speak. The best description I ever heard of how to think about your audience, whether it's your Instagram followers, your YouTube subscribers, your email newsletter subscribers, or your LinkedIn followers, this is your pre-customer database.
Okay.
Right? Pre-customer database means that it is a database. These are people who have willingly given you their contact details, who have put up their hand up and said, please stay in touch with me. But they're not necessarily customers of your product, right?
They just want to know what's happening.
They just want to know what's happening related to the category, the product category that you happen to be in. So they may not be customers yet today, or even tomorrow, or even next week. But when the time comes for them to need a product in your category, you're the first ones they think of because they've already got this relationship with you.
That's what we would hope, right? But then it comes down to, from your description, you've got a captive audience, and then on the other side of the argument, you've got an awareness campaign that everyone seemed to be doing as well and engaging very popular influencers. who may or may not align with your brand or even the product that you're selling, but just because they have millions of followers, you're engaging them to do something.
Well, first of all, if you're...
Which is a turnoff as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I mean, and this is where I think a lot of brands get their approach to influencer marketing wrong, right? Is that there's a tendency to just sort of look at influencers and decide which influencer to partner with purely based on what their numbers look like, right? And I think what's more important is, there's got to be an alignment of brand values, and the reason why you work with an influencer is because they have access to an audience that you personally want access to as well.
Not 15-year-old kids if you're selling.
Well, exactly, right. Or if you're the monetary authority of Singapore and you have a very different audience, you don't use millennials who are essentially lifestyle bloggers or lifestyle Instagrammers or fashion Instagrammers. There's an inherent kind of mismatch with that kind of thing. So the more important thing is that you find people who have an audience you want, but also with whom you have similar brand values, right? There are things in common so that it's not out of place when they talk about your brand. But even at the same time, while you're using those influencers, you still have to keep in mind, like, how do I work with an influencer in such a way that I can, well, to use a kind of crude term, harvest their followers to convert them into my followers, right? And again, there's great brands that have figured out how to do this. They work with a number of influencers to make people aware of their brand and talk about their brand, but then bring them into their channels and their platforms and convert them into their subscribers and get them to follow their newsletter and get them to follow their YouTube channel.
So on paper, that's how the process should be. But okay, so you get this. Let's just say you have a 20-year-old influencer with 1 million followers. What are they called now? Key opinion leaders. I don't know how he can be a leader at 20, but okay, a 20-year-old key opinion leader, 1 million followers, and then you get this luxury brand engaging this young person for a watch, let's say, that costs $5,000, and then you get a father seeing this on Instagram. It's a turnoff, right? I would be like, why are you wearing a watch that it took me 5, 10 years, 20 years to afford?
Yeah, and this is, I think, one of the temptations all the time to when brands are considering doing any kind of content, is that there's always the temptation to say, let's go for the widest audience, right? Let's go for the biggest audience.
Because that's what the brands are ultimately looking for, the number.
Yes, and no, but also this is a way of thinking that, again, goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of this talk about how advertising is traditionally done, right? In the traditional kind of interruption-based advertising model, you advertise in the TV station and the radio station, what we refer to as mass media, right? You go for the widest possible audience. And out of that 1 million people, there's maybe like 5,000 people who are relevant to you. But, in those days, you had no choice, right? There was no medium that reached those 5,000 people. And what I'm saying is now there is, right? Yeah. Now you can. And not only can you find the influencers that are relevant to those 5,000 people, if an influencer, if a kid can create a successful YouTube channel or a successful Instagram account, what's to stop a brand from doing the same thing and creating something that is just as relevant to that audience? So, there is an opportunity, I think, for every brand, if they do this properly and if they take the right approach, to behave like a media company, behave like a publisher, and attract the audience that way. And the other thing that I'd say, if you're marketing right now when you're considering this type of approach, is don't be afraid to go niche.
Yeah, and stop chasing the numbers, right?
Yeah, stop chasing the big numbers, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's much more important to go after a relatively small but very, very passionate, very, very enthusiastic audience and grow from there.
Exactly.
Yes, because they'll pay attention, right?
Because those, I think, those people who would engage back with you will be your, in a way, influencers. Because
right.
They have more credibility.
Yeah.
If they tell or recommend something.
Because they talk within that community of like-minded people who are all into the same thing. then it's just way more credible and it's much more believable.
Okay.